You guys ready to play podcast?
Let's play podcast.
All right, let's do this.
Shut up and sit down.
Hi, Sharon, thought I'd give you a ring. It crossed my mind, so now I'm wondering if you're not settled in. You might like to meddle in some adrenaline pumping, pedaling.
Oh, dolls, I thought you'd never ask. I'd love to get my hand behind some handlebars.
You are listening to another episode of the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von During. The guys blabber on about themselves, talk to someone else about some stuff, and finish by blabbering just a little more. There you go. The show in a nutshell. Tip of the day. Talk does not cook rice, so quit yapping and get to it already.
You can watch me whoosh by on my push back, my tush high and my thighs bumping away. Seems like a sweet deal. Listen, 3 wheels, yet I still steal the show from your Camry. On my bicycle, life was icicle, but now I'm cruising with the grace of a manta ray. I'm on the whole game from my own lane. Hail or rain off the chain. Yeah, you know that I'm a cycler.
Going round, 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 round. Going round, 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 round. Going round.
I'm just saying, sometimes you get a knock on the head, you get special powers. It happens all the time. Read a comic book, okay?
Hi, and welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I'm Jake Von During, and I'm here with Lance friggin' Hepler.
Lance friggin' Hepler. Welcome.
For your listening pleasure.
For your listening pleasure.
It
Or
is a pleasure.
displeasure is more like
Could
it.
be, could
Your
be.
listening displeasure. That's dumb.
To his left, Matt Legrand.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? You guys look fantastic today. Fan-frickin'
Speak for yourself,
fantastic.
Matt. You look good.
Thank you. I try.
And we've got a special guest with us today, Sarah Gates.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sarah, you've been on the podcast before.
I have when we talked about Cycle Oregon a couple of years ago.
It's been a minute, so welcome back.
Thank you.
Sarah's going to be a big part of the conversation that we're going to have a little bit later on today, so I'm really kind of chomping at the bit. I haven't had a chance to talk to her since this, but we can do that today.
Sarah,
Nice.
you were pretty involved with Cycle Oregon, but that's no more. Is that correct?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm the vice chair of the board for
Okay.
the C4 portion of Cycle Oregon, and I'm going to make that distinction because we have some really cool things going on. We had our last Cycle Oregon Classic, which was our 7-day ride this year. And we're sunsetting that ride, but we're doing 4 rides next year. We're not going away. Just that
Okay.
event is going away because it's just no longer sustainable to do a 7-day ride that moves 6 times.
Yes. Yeah.
Just and at the scale we like to do that ride. But I made a point about the C4 on purpose. We are starting a C3, which will be the Cycle Oregon Foundation, and we're going to be expanding what we do. We're taking over the Scenic Byways program. We're taking over Jumpstart, which is also known as Safe Route to Schools. And we're also going to be really trying to expand the welcomability of cycling across Oregon, getting more people on bikes, doing all sorts of things to really just expand the economic impact of cycling in
Gotcha.
Oregon.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes a big difference because I was under the impression that Cycle Oregon was just going away, and it's just the 7-day classic.
Yes.
There's still the 3-day gravel. There's still 4-day events. There's
Yep.
still other events that are happening. Okay,
Yeah, so
this makes more
we're going to have
sense.
4 events next year, and we'll be releasing the save the dates. But we did talk about it at the Classic. We're going to be having our gravel ride. We're going to be doing the Weekender, which is the most sort of family-oriented ride.
yeah.
We are still going to have the women's ride, and then we'll have a new 5-day event in in that summer time frame.
Gotcha.
That will be moving a couple of times and having a variety of options, but we are still kind of fine-tuning that, and so stay tuned for lots of details.
Cool.
It's going to be great. And I think and they're going to be a little smaller too. We're trying to really focus the experience.
Yes.
C3, C4, is that like cycle like 3 days, cycle 4 days kind of thing? Is that stands for?
No, so C3 and C4 have to do with the tax designation. So a C3 is a charitable foundation.
501c3?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that means people...
We've got one of those.
You
We have
do.
one of those, yeah.
And it means that donations are tax deductible, and it kind
Excellent.
of changes the rules, whereas being a C4 is really oriented with the event space. And we're still not for profit, but we're not... You can't donate and deduct it on your taxes.
Got it.
Cool.
All right.
Well, wasn't even expecting to talk about that, but that's some really good information.
I was interested in that. Sorry, I just jumped right in.
Well, I
without-
appreciate you asking, because actually that's really important for people to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, it's going to be great. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Backpedal boys.
Backpedal.
Who wants to go first, Matt?
I can be quick.
Be quick.
I have been running a lot. That's about it. Running every day, hitting the trail every day, Heritage Trail.
Yeah.
triathlon shirt. Lance has a triathlon shirt. I have been swimming as well, but just not biking all that much. Cross country's in full swing. We just had districts last night, and it went okay for our team.
Cool.
Yeah, girls won, guys got second.
How'd the run go?
Pretty good. I finished.
That's great.
Oh, I love The
that
Office.
great?
It's Office
Because they
reference.
accomplished something.
What was your mile time?
About 7.
I could beat that on a skateboard.
Well, that has wheels.
Yeah, well, my feet don't, and I could still crush that time.
Matt is crushing with his cross country team.
Crushing.
Love it.
Yep, cross country team's doing okay.
Cool. Right on.
Trails are good.
Awesome.
Back pedal. Done. Lance,
Yo,
did you race any?
I did not race.
What?
Okay.
How about that?
You're dead to us.
I
then.
know. Sorry, I've not.
You got
filled
that
up my
rectal
thing.
thermometer? He needs to just temperature
I
take
know,
it.
right?
I have temperature taken.
Something's wrong with this guy.
I didn't race. I was in St. George, Utah, and there was a race on Saturday that I could have done, but I ended up with a buddy that showed up in St. George, and he's like, "Hey, come ride with us," and I couldn't pass it up. I skipped the race, and I rode Gooseberry Mesa, which is a very world famous mountain bike route just outside of St. George. And so it's very technical. It's very fun. It's very scenic. It is one of the greatest routes around for mountain bikes. But I had a riot in St. George. All I did was I rode mountain bikes. I rode my gravel bike. I rode road bikes. I went on this really cool hike with my wife and all her soccer friends that were down there. So
Mountain bike, gravel, road.
yes.
No, you had to have your cyclocross bike because you were thinking you were going to race.
I did race once while I was there, but that was
Did you have
last
2
week.
cyclocross bikes?
I just took one.
Okay, that's risky.
So I had
It's
4 bikes.
risky. Oh, risky only bringing 4
He
bikes.
threw his gravel bike in the pit.
Well,
Probably
no,
know
There
yeah,
was
that
no
would work.
pit.
There was
so
no
it
pit.
didn't
Oh, really?
matter. It's just
Yeah.
a
Okay.
little race with no pit, so it's like you just
Okay.
risk it.
So you suffered through with only 4 bikes.
You just kind of go with it. But the riding in St. George this weekend was phenomenal.
Good weather?
The weather was perfect.
Good.
It was like 70 degrees every day. The riding buddies were great. I don't know. The trails were in great condition. I had a absolute blast. I do not regret missing the race in Utah at all. It's all good. There was a race, Trophy Cup race back here that I was trying to get back for on Tuesday night, and my wife and I kind of like hit the road hard to make it back in time. And I actually made it home in time, but I was so exhausted from driving for so long that I'm like,
How many hours was the drive?
well, it's like a 15-hour drive from St. George. So we did like 4 hours the first day and had dinner with my kids and hung out with them. And actually, today's my son's birthday. Now that I think
happy
about
birthday,
it.
Lake.
It's Lake Hepler's 28th
Uh-oh.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
I think he's 28.
How do you have a 28-year-old?
I know it's a little weird. Yeah, I have
We
a
started
20-year-old.
having kids at 7.
I was 26. 26? 20. I was 26 when Lake was born. Yeah. So, yeah.
I have a 29-year-old. So.
Yes, there you go. So,
Crazy.
so we stopped there and then hung out for a bit. And so we broke up the drive a little bit. But, I meant to make it to the last Trophy Cup, and I was just too wiped out. So I didn't. Anyway.
Last Trophy Cup race of the season.
Yes.
You missed it.
I missed it. Yeah. But it's all good. So.
All right.
I don't know. I had like a full-on off-road training camp all by myself in St. George for the whole week. It was phenomenal. I rode way too hard every day. I had no plan. It was just like, oh, this trail is cool. Let's see how fast I can go on it. Oh. And so I would ride these trails really hard with these buddies of mine, and they're like on my wheel. I can't talk enough about it. We did.
Jij bent een klootzak.
Yeah, I need to shut up. That means you're an asshole in Dutch. So we did Wire Mesa, and I rode the Kolob Terrace Road outside of Zion National Park, which is...
Oh, I saw you did a hike in Zion also.
We did a hike just outside of Zion, a Via Ferrata hike. Do you know what that is?
I assume that it means that you had to climb ladders and stuff.
Via Ferrata is an Italian term for the Italian Alps where you make...
Does it mean like
you clip
Italian
in,
for you're effed?
You're Italian for hold on for dear life.
Yeah.
So they put like rebar steps into the stone vertical cliffs, and you have to hook in with a harness and wire. And so the routes are set, and you just have to like move along. So we were like on the edge of a 500-foot
cliff,
cliff outside of Zion, and
That does not sound good to me.
dude, it was really cool. I had a great time. Go look at the pictures on my Strava.
The gram.
You won't be disappointed. Or on Instagram, I guess I put it all over that too. So I'll shut up now. That's it. I had a great time.
Sarah, how was this last week for you?
It was basically, I'm preparing for another adventure here in a couple of weeks. So it was all hills or all high cadence work. And probably the one thing that I'll just talk about is I went up and I rode Lone Butte, which is the OMTM route that is sort of east of Cougar and gets you up on the Lewis River. You go up above it. And it was actually riding, it was just like so superbly. It's one of my favorite gravel rides. It takes 2 hours to get there to start the ride in the car. Yeah. And managed to find a couple of new beautiful Forest Service roads, 8851 and 88, to kind of expand the route. It was, I saw nobody. The gravel was just luxury Cadillac gravel.
And nobody else out there.
No,
Wow.
I saw like two people pretending to hunt on a recumbent bike, which was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And, a couple of pickup trucks, and then no one was on the Lewis River either. And I got myself down on the Lewis River Trail, which I was horribly underbiked because I was on slicks, and that trail is not for slicks or a gravel bike riding slicks. But I hike-a-biked it. It was just stunning. So
Sarah's-
cannot recommend that ride enough between now and when the snow comes. You should, if you love
Lone Butte.
Lone Butte, and it was about 55 miles the way I did it. And there's many, if you go to their website, omtm.cc, they have like the list of options. If you've never ridden it, cannot recommend it enough this time of year.
Gotcha. Sarah's one of 3 friends of mine that is just a walking Rolodex of glorious ride after glorious ride. She knows way too much about gravel stuff in a good way.
And I'm second only to Jerry in my knowledge of the Gifford.
Well, actually, you know what? I would have to put 4 on there. Edward Douglas, who's been on the podcast before, seems to know all of the different rides, and another teammate of ours, Chris Hull.
Yeah.
Like between the 3-4 of you, you guys could create you guys are like all that in a bag of chips and more than OMTM. So
Yeah, you could write a book.
Well, I'm trying to fill in if you look at the Gifford on Strava on my heat map, my goal in the next couple of years to have like every
paint the whole thing red. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like another good friend of ours, Scott Westfall, who lives riding around Camas, and he will do every single road, and it looks like one of those, when they pour like the metal down the ant hole, and you see like the whole forest of like everything. That's Scott with Strava. He'll hit every single road. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Gifford is one of those magical places, and when you get up there, you're just happy.
And it's one of those things where, like on a day like today, it's beautiful out. You can see how many mountains?
It depends where you are, but you can see, usually you've got Helens, you've got Adams, you've got Rainier, you can sometimes see Hood. You could maybe even see Jeff, potentially, if you were in the right spot. And what was one of the most fun things about sort of that middle section of the Gifford that is west of Mount Adams is you will come around the corner and you will have Mount Adams just whacking you in the face. It's so big, it takes up the whole sky. And I had one of those, couldn't really see any mountains, and all of a sudden it was like, well, hello, Mr. Adams.
It's right there.
Freshly white, and it was just for 2 seconds. But when that happens, it's like it's just hitting you across the face, and it's the most magical thing. Yeah, that's one of the falls on the Lewis River.
Wow.
There's a beautiful waterfall she took a picture of. That's on her Strava
And the
as well.
Lewis River has 3. And there's upper, middle, and lower. And lower is the easiest to get to, and upper and middle you can get to on the bike. It just requires a little more skill and having tires with actual knobs on them. But even if you like to hike, that is a trail that is insane.
Wow. Matt, you and I need to go do a gravel ride with cameras.
Yes.
You know how people do like the barn tour and they'll go take pictures of all the barns? Let's go take pictures of mountains.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Or waterfalls. I mean, those waterfalls look
Hey,
amazing.
don't go chasing waterfalls, man.
Okay, that's true. I've heard that somewhere.
You stick to the rivers and lakes like you used to.
Yeah.
Well played. Well played.
Anyway, that's enough about me.
Cool.
Jake, backpedal.
I had an MRI result reading to me. And drum roll, please. Inconclusive.
Son of a
Man.
Are you kidding me?
In freaking conclusive. So
Glad you spent that 45 minutes sitting in a tube.
and like basically another like month of like listening to everybody's orders, like take all the time off and Well, anyway, you can look at it 2 different ways. There's good news out of that and there's bad news out of that. So all along, he said, you've likely have a labral tear in your hip, and that's what that pinging is. And he was expecting to fully see a labral tear in my hip, and he said that he could not discern, and the radiologist or the tech, whoever it is that reads those, said the same thing, that there is no labral tear, which is good, kind of, because they don't have to go surgically repair anything. But the bad side is that, all right, well, if it's not that, then what the hell is it? And
if you and Evan have the same injury that needs surgical repair, can you guys get like a discount, like a 2-for-1?
Maybe.
I feel like you should.
What's up with Evan? Does anybody know?
He's recovering.
He's like back on the bike and back running.
He just started back running, I think, from what I've heard through the grapevine. Yeah.
Sorry, I won't hijack.
I think I saw something. He rode like 300 miles last week.
Yeah.
So
he rode a lot.
Must be feeling all right.
Yeah.
But anyhow, there were some things that he was able to tell me, and I've known this since I broke my hip when I was 10 years ago, that I have what's called a dysplastic hip. So if you think about your acetabulum,
plastic,
just think of like hip dysplasia. It's kind of the same thing.
I'm just going to assume that there's plastic in there somewhere. It's like it should be titanium. But
no, I've only got titanium in the whole hip. But basically, like if you think of your hip as a ball and socket, so it rolls around and all that stuff. So acetabulum is where the ball goes into, and it's a little bit, we'll say, underdeveloped. So it's a little bit more open.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more susceptible to things like dislocating or popping out. But for me, I've always been super tight in my hips, and I've always had really good strength there. And that has always been something that has played to my favor. He did go on to say, like some of these injuries that you've had with respect to like the muscle strain and the tear and the cramping and all that other stuff might have made it overly tightened, and it might cause something to be pinched in there. And that's kind of what I'm feeling. But he did tell me, he's like, you don't want to work too much on flexibility, because if it becomes too lax, you're going to get into a situation where your hip's not going to be exactly. And we don't want to be dealing with that. That would suck. And he did recommend, or not recommend, well, kind of recommended that I maybe seek out another hip specialist who can take a further look at it. And what they would do is like surgery where I can't remember what the surgical procedure is called, but basically they will break.
It's called peg leg syndrome.
They cut
pirate syndrome.
They cut kind of your pelvis, and they pull it apart and they screw it in differently, and they make the acetabulum more surrounding the hip. And I'm like, I don't need to do that because I've lived my whole life and I've been fine. Let's just come up with a remedy for what we've got going on.
I think there's that Blade Runner guy, and he is in jail for like killing his wife or something. Girlfriend.
Yep.
Yeah. And he doesn't need his leg right now since he's in jail.
You can borrow his legs.
There you go.
I think we can make something work here.
So I do have a plan, and I know that I'm still dealing, and he did see scar tissue, and we've got adhesions that we're dealing with, and I've got all kinds of other issues, and it still sucks, but I've got a plan that I'm going to try. I trying, right?
Is it rehab? I mean, is the plan like PT?
It's going to be some PT kind of stuff, but it's more like I know what I need to do, and it's just going to be I got to get back into the gym. I've got to work on like some core strengthening. I got to work on some hip stuff. I got to work on some stability things. I do need to get a little bit of flexibility back because I am dealing with a little bit of tightness. And
what gym are you going to go to?
I am looking at 2 different ones right now, and I've checked out one of them, and I need to go to the one that's closer to my house, but I'm not too keen on that because
we're going to get swole.
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, I walk into those things and I just get swole. So anyway, I've got a plan. We're going to do that. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, what about riding? He's like, well, I don't see any reason why you can't, start slowly like progressing back into riding. So I've ridden twice this week on the trainer, which was
That's good.
A suck fest.
But you're back on it.
I'm riding at like 150 watts, and my leg feels like
welcome to my
world. A cramp. I've got this pinching feeling in my hip. I'm like, I'm a 90-year-old man living in a body that's just completely breaking down. So anyway, I'll get back there.
90-year-old man living in a body that's easily 125,
if not even older.
Oh.
So, but I'm gonna start getting back out, and I want to try and get on the bike this weekend and maybe ride outside if weather permits. I haven't ridden a bike outside in months, which is just killing me.
And it's decent weather right now, which is crazy.
Let's go in 2 hours, you and me.
I wish I could. I got to go to a football game for my son. So
don't miss
Important
that.
things.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
Sarah's sitting here looking at all of us. She's like,
Who is he?
He's an asshole, sir.
I know that. What's his name?
That is his name, sir. Asshole. Major asshole.
How many assholes we got on this ship
What is this
anyhow?
from? What is this from?
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
Anybody?
that's about right, Sarah, isn't it?
What's that?
Is it from like Spaceballs or something?
Matt is on it.
Spaceballs.
That was a guess.
Spaceballs.
I don't like,
Really?
It didn't like click like I didn't remember it.
Gotcha.
but-
Rick Marin, yep. So
So-
cool. All right, sorry. Had to drop that. All right. Do you guys want to jump into some of that
news? Do we need
newsy stuff, or do you guys is Champ in the house?
I don't know if Champ is around.
I think Champ is here.
Champ Alley in sports.
Champ is here.
Champ here.
Yes, Champ is here.
Smash your face into a car windshield.
new one.
And then
Whoa,
take
this
your
is different.
mother, Dorothy Mantooth, out for a nice seafood dinner and never call her again. Champ.
Wow, did you mix that?
What
That's
up,
pretty
Champ?
impressive.
Champ is here. Yes, the road season is now done with UCI, which is great. Guess which team actually won the team competition? Just take a guess.
Yumbo.
No.
UAE?
UAE ended up taking the team championship, which is kind of interesting. Anyway.
How did they pull that off?
Pogacar just won so many one-day races. And
there is that, yeah.
They did well enough in all the Grand Tours and all the stuff.
Yeah,
they
makes
ended up
sense.
winning.
Makes sense.
So anyway, but the biggest race from this weekend was the first UCI World Cup cyclocross race. So, and it was the only cyclocross race. The UCI cyclocross race is going to be held in the United States this year. So it was Trek Cup in Wisconsin at Waterloo. Kind of crazy race. It was won by 20-year-old Thibaut Nice, who is the son of Sven Nice.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. So Sven Nice, I don't know, what was he, like 7-time, cyclocross
world
champion or something like that?
Champion of Hetmere.
He just quit,
that
right?
was Lars van der Haar.
Oh, I always get
feel
that
like,
backwards.
I feel
Dang
like
it.
he just quit being competitive like maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, he's still
7 years ago.
he's still
Not
got
that
some, like-
long ago that he.
He's the coach of the team that like four
Makes
of the
sense.
top guys won, and his 20-year-old son won this race. So
Wow.
yeah, pretty crazy. So that was exciting. And
Okay, but real quick, who was there that was notable?
Ellie Easterbit, Michael Van Tauern, all the major
The hitters
European guys,
minus
Lawrence Sweeck, who won the championship, not the championship, who won the series last year. He hurt himself, and Vanderpool and Van Aert are
they'll be here later.
they're cherry picking a few races. They're not
same
doing
as
the
they
whole
did last
season.
year.
Yeah,
if you guys
they're
remember that.
So Big Seven now?
Part of the big-
Oh,
he's
can we
only 20.
kick out Remco?
We can kick out
All
Remco.
right.
So he's done with that. The women's race there was won by Fem Van Empel. Yeah, I think Fem Van Empel and Pug Petersen was second. Clara Hansinger went over and lined up first UCI race. She started like on the second or third row, got her usual terrible start, and clawed her way back to seventh.
Nice
Wow,
work.
good job, Clara.
So yeah, so she actually did pretty well for a
that helps
UCI
her,
race.
That'll help her starting position going
Yes,
forward.
It will. It'll almost get her on the front row.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
which is good. But the races all go back to Europe now, starting next week. There's no race this week.
I imagine she's gone for the season.
Yes.
She's heading that way. Okay.
Now, I know Team S&M has some decent sponsors, and I'm sure that they've been trying to stockpile some funds to underwrite the cost of sending Clara over to do all of these races. Do they have any, are they reaching out to the community? Or
They have not reached out to the community.
no, GoFundMe, nothing
No.
like that?
Uh-uh.
Interesting.
As far as I know, they have not.
Yeah,
Does she get any money from just USA Cycling?
No idea.
Yeah, there's got to be.
I'm
we need
full
to
of
come on the podcast.
Non-answers
Yeah.
for that.
Just looking into that. I think that's something that they should do because, I mean, she's America's sweetheart. She's our local sweetheart here.
Yeah.
We would love to see her be supported and go over there and do everything that she needs to do and not have to worry about the funding part of it.
Yeah, that's what they hope. They can only do so many races because you can't go to Europe for, what is it? I mean, the
Well, you can
World
if you
Championships.
Europe on $1 a day. I think I read a book. There's a book about it.
Something.
You
Was
can
it?
if you got the funds.
If you've got the funds, you can. But I mean, the World Championships aren't till end of January or something like that. And so if she goes now, that's all of November and December and part of January. It's almost 3 months. So I know. It'd be great.
Cool.
But I don't think she's doing all of those. So other than that, that was kind of the extent of the UCI stuff. Our local race, our first cyclocross crusade race happened at... where was it at Heron Lakes, which is at PIR. It was very well attended. Lots of people there. I did not go race because I was in Utah screwing off. But I don't think the 1-2 race was actually won by Max. Who is it? I'm already screwing it up. Max Ritzau, who comes from Eugene. Carl Decker was second. The
Wow.
local grandpa. I call him Grandpa Decker because he's like 49.
He's younger than you.
He's young.
He's your son, dude.
He's 3 years younger than me. I think Carl Decker is. So it's kind of exciting. And then it was almost a sweep by the rest of the S&M women in the Cat 1-2 women. Sophie Russenberger won and Jenna Lingwood second. But Paula from Beachy Calista was third. So I can't say her last name, so I didn't even try. It's Italian.
She's a cross-country coach.
Is she really?
Yeah, I think so. She
is.
From Spain.
Yep.
Paula Escavaria.
Oh, have you talked to her about Spain?
No, I just know of her. I believe she talked to a couple, Misty on our team. She was chatting and they were talking about some of the junior stuff that we had going on.
Yeah, I talked to her about cyclocross at every single cross-country meet because that's what she likes to talk about. Yeah.
She's been racing very well in cyclocross this year, so good on her.
Cool.
So good for her. Other than that, champ out. That's it.
Thanks, champ.
Thanks, champ.
Anything you need to speak about with respect to maybe like
cross-country results?
Lucy Charles.
Lucy Charles Barclay.
There was the World Championship, that Kona World Championships happened.
This is a triathlon podcast.
I am surprised it was not a takeover.
Does anyone have any triathlon shirts?
This is.
Why are you so sweaty, dude?
I don't know.
Kona World,
making you nervous over there?
Kona World Championships was female specific, and Lucy Charles Barclay led wire to wire like swim. I mean, she's like superstar swimmer, and so if she's going to win a race, it's pretty much going to be like from the gun, which is the way that the race went. Let's see. It was her race, and she won by a couple of minutes. She set a new course record.
Wow, was that who you would have picked? Did she look that strong going into this?
I thought about that because I usually do a video where I talk about like Kona predictions, and I was like, okay, I don't know. I probably would have put like Daniela Rife, who's won it a number of times. I don't know how everyone's training has gone.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't paid that close attention to it.
Daniela Rife was fifth.
She said
which she
course
came
record
back from that, and then
Elements
Annie Hogg was second. And she's a strong runner, and she biked through the field and then ran through the field and ended up in second. So that's good.
Did the elements have anything to do with her setting a course record, or was she just that strong?
I don't know. It didn't. The conditions didn't look bad.
Okay.
So I'm sure that you have to have decent conditions.
Sure. Yeah, it's got to be in your favor somewhat, but I mean, we have like
not
some
windy and not too hot is what you need on that island.
All right. Yeah. Well, good on her because she's been
second like a bazillion times.
Yeah, she's like the Wout van Aert of 23.
And I kind of have like, so one of the things that I really respect about her is she's been second, but she's also sat in second, got passed and moved into third, and then that's like a death sentence usually in a race like that. And she's fought back to get second. So I have a ton of respect for that amount of effort and dedication and just the commitment to go for it, even if it is only second place, which again, she's done probably, 5 times or something, or 4 or 5 times. She's hit second a lot.
Good on her. Good. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Cool. All right.
Champ out.
Triathlon champ.
Get out of Lance's chair. Lance, you want to open that up? We're going to do a little Patreon drawing here for another Dialed Sports water bottle, which is pretty stinking awesome.
Those are good.
And they've been pretty popular, too. Lance is going to pull a name out of the little jar here, and
the winner is Chris Surratt.
Nice.
Hey, there you go, buddy. All right, Chris. Let us know how you would like us to get you your water bottle.
Needs a water bottle.
Yeah.
He's back at it.
He is back at it.
Yeah.
He'll be at some of the Cross Crusade races too, hopefully. So
cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Chris.
We do appreciate everybody supporting the show through the Patreon. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon for yourself, you can go to dialedpodcast.com, click on the Patreon link, and pick a Patreon that works best for you. Cool. Ice cream sandwiches. Let's be done with all that stuff. All right. Now the stuff that we've really wanting to get into and talk about is the topic of Miss Sarah Gates. You did a massive ride.
I did.
Do you want to tell us what that ride was called?
Sure. I did the Great Divide Mountain Bike Trail mountain bike route from the U.S. portion. It runs technically from Banff to Antelope Wells, and we did it from Rooseville to Antelope Wells.
Okay.
Rooseville is on the Canadian border.
It is, yes.
So it starts in, what is that? Is that Montana?
It is.
Okay.
So it's very northern Montana at that border crossing. You literally, there's pictures of me standing in front of the Welcome to Canada sign. And then we basically worked our way through Montana to Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico and finished in Antelope Wells.
Give us some numbers. What's the total mileage of the trip?
We did a little over 2,500 miles, and we climbed a little over 160,000 feet of elevation.
Holy crap!
Oh my gosh,
that's crazy.
Okay, so this is a route you did with other people. So from when I hear the Tour Divide or of this route, there's a quote unquote race that happens.
Correct.
And that goes from Banff all the way to Indian Wells as well.
Antelope Wells.
Antelope Wells.
Yeah.
Pardon me, not Indian Wells. Where's that? Palm Springs.
That's Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that goes from Banff.
Very different place,
It's a
trust me.
very different
Very
place.
different place.
So there's a race that happens, but there also is this a supported ride or is this completely self-supported? And were you with a group of people?
So the route was created by the Adventure Cycling Association in 1977, and that's who I rode with. They do a tour that is van supported. So rather than a lot of people who tour it carry all their own gear, just like the racers do, we had the luxury, I'll call it, of having our duffels carried every day in a van, and they carried cooking gear for us and food. So we just had to carry what we needed on that day. So any food, any water, any gear, all your emergency supplies. And then we would show up at camp. We had to set up our tents, and we did all the cooking.
You cooked for yourself. You set up your tents. You just didn't haul your stuff.
We didn't have to haul all of the stuff.
The camping stuff.
Yeah, and the cooking stuff and the food, because you think about it, if you're self-supporting, you've got to have several days of food usually because there are long stretches where there's no resupply and water is very, very scarce. So and we also had a sweep rider, so no one was left behind. And so I'd never done something of this magnitude. You just talked about, I ride gravel all the time. I go out for 1 or 2 days and I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
This is a little different because there are times when you don't have any resupply for 4 or 5 days. And you are up at 12,000 feet of elevation and you have grizzly bears and, there's a lot of potential issues, and it's very technical terrain. If you're not a really technical gravel rider, a lot of baby head. Let's just leave it.
Baby skull heads.
I would call it worse than baby head. Just to talk about like Boulder River. So you needed to know if you didn't know how to ride it, you could get yourself in trouble, or if you had a really bad mechanical. So we had a sweep rider who basically meant everybody got to camp at night, and we rode at our own pace, and we kind of buddied up. There were 13 riders originally. By the time we finished, there were 8.
Oh,
and
because stuff breaks or people break down or they just their body gives out.
Yeah, we had one person leave on day 3. It was clearly not the ride for him. I don't think had ever really ridden gravel like this or at this type of riding, and he was just so uncomfortable. He just pulled the plug, and that was super smart on his part because he could have gotten really hurt.
Roadie?
He showed up in road pedals, so
Roadie.
And before I'll tell the rest of that story. But what was interesting is the ages of the people, because the majority of people were over 65 on this. I was one of the youngest.
That's fantastic.
Well, who else has 2.5 months to take
True.
off?
This is true.
Yeah, we had a couple of 45-year-olds, 2 or 3 in their mid to late 50s, a few in their 60s, and 4 or 5 in their 70s, including one who was 77 from Sisters, Oregon.
Wow.
Huh.
And he signed up 10 days before the ride started, which is also just absolutely crazy.
I can do this. I'm just going to go.
What am I going to do next week? Oh, let's do this.
Yeah,
that looks fun.
He made it almost all the way through Colorado before his body gave out, and he was just like, it wasn't fun anymore. And so he made a super smart decision to pull out. But we had a couple people get injured. We had a couple people just kind of get done and pull out.
What kind of injuries did you see? Were people just like washed out front tires and then they go down and they get a little bit beat up and they smart about it?
Yeah, we had one woman lost it on a descent and dislocated her shoulder really badly going into Helena. And she actually came back at Steamboat. She went home to Hawaii, recuperated, came back, and then the altitude just got her, and her shoulder was not really up for it.
She's tough.
And
for
she's
her to try
70,
that.
in her mid-70s.
Wow.
And she weighed about 80 pounds. I think her bike weighed more than her. She was insane. Allison was just, and she, tiny little thing, right? and this bike, I'm sure, weighed more than her. We had one person get a concussion. He fell really badly in New Mexico, and another one crashed that same day and kind of just bunged himself up pretty badly. So, but that was all we had. We had no like life-threatening injuries, which was super awesome. So yeah, let's see.
How about you? Did you keep the rubber side down the whole time?
I had no crashies, no flatties, no whammies at all.
No mechanicals either?
Nope.
You are a rock star.
Well, I would say who maintained the bike going into it?
I don't know.
I have no idea. But that's
important. Your cycling needs.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what's really part of the reason I had no issues is I had done a ton of research. I knew what we were getting into, and I really thought about my bike carefully.
I think the word ton is an understatement.
Well,
a metric ton? Yes,
yeah.
okay.
But the Tour Divide and the race, and even just the GDMBR is so well documented. You have it on bikepacking.com. There's all the race coverage. There's tons of YouTube content on it. So when you sign up for something like this, it's very easy to know what you're getting into. I was actually very surprised because we did have several people who really, I don't think, really recognized what they were getting into.
Like that old guy, he's like, "What's this thing you guys are doing? I'm in."
No,
7 days before.
He actually knew.
He's good.
He's actually a retired forest firefighter.
Wow.
He used to ride in the helicopters. He was the forester that rode in the helicopters to tell them where to dump stuff. And so he was totally, he knew what he was getting into. But we had a couple that were like the person on the early in the ride who quit. Another one who was like, is there a pavement option? He really didn't like the gravel. It's not his preference. And just some things like that where you're like, okay.
Turn right for pavement.
Anybody riding on e-bikes?
No, it was not, no e-bikes allowed. There was no way to charge them.
Gotcha.
But, but that research, I think one reason why I did so well is I chose really smartly on my tires. I rode Rene Hurst knobbies, 55 millimeter.
Big tires.
Big tires.
Yeah. Just more comfortable. Speed is not really important. So I need comfort and flat protection.
Correct. And tubeless, of course. There were two people not running tubeless. By the end, only one was running not running.
They had them swap over.
Yeah. I ran a full red shift cockpit, so I had a shock stem and a shock seat post.
Yeah.
As well as the kitchen sink handlebars, which gave me a lot of variety of hand positions, and that shock, just enough shock to take the chatter out of things. I could run. It was a steel frame, so I didn't worry about something
nicks or bumps or.
No, it handled, and I'm running 650B wheels, which gives me a super low center of gravity. And plus, for someone my size, it's the right scale of bike. So I'm just basically bulletproof, going down hills and all, and in the handling of it. So, I chose very wisely, and I thought through how I weighted the bike, where I put weight on the bike to keep myself as low and stable as possible. And I think that made a huge difference for me.
So this group you're with, they were also mechanics and had gear, and did they maintain your bike? So you maintained it yourself unless you had something you couldn't fix and you could ask, I'm assuming.
So we had the two guides. One happened to work in a bike shop, and he was always willing to help, but they didn't have a ton of, we had to bring all our own spare parts, and usually John would help, and he loved to teach. And so we, it was kind of a mutual effort, but if it was a really big job, you had to go to a bike store. And luckily Jackson, Wyoming has a bike store. Pinedale, Wyoming has a bike store. Silver City has a bike,
Did you go through Colorado too?
Yes.
Like Steamboat?
Steamboat.
Or Breckenridge?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We went in through Dillon to over Breck, and then up over the one of the big Boreas Pass there.
Okay. So do you take like a whole bin full of extra parts, like extra tires, extra chain rings, extra batteries? Is that what everybody does?
I had a bag that was maybe 1.5 feet long by 6 inches high that I've put in my duffel, and I had extra rotors, I had extra through axles, I had extra spokes, I had an extra tire, I had some extra sealant, which managed to explode in my bag. Which is it's just a nasty thing to have happen.
When you're changing altitude so much all over the place.
Yeah.
It's
And the one thing I did change out as I got to Jackson, Wyoming was I was running a 38 in the front. So my smallest gear was a 38.52.
Okay.
38 oval in the front. And It was just too high. And so I got
It's too big.
Yes, it was too big. So I went to a 34.
You went to 34, which meant you had to take out a link or two of your chain.
I actually didn't
have to.
Didn't have to.
Fantastic.
And so the bike store in Jackson, you know, I called them ahead of time because we do have self coverage off and on. I just basically said, "Can you get?" And they said, "Yes, I can." And they ordered it, and I showed up with my bike, and they swapped it out, and it was the best decision. I would have really suffered in Colorado otherwise. Really, really suffered because we were, you know, we had 2 passes that were close to 12,000 feet, and we had multiple. We were above 10,000 so often for all the way through Colorado and into New Mexico.
I followed along, and there were days where you only rode like 25 miles because you were going up huge passes, and then other days where you would ride like 70 or 80 miles.
Yes.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, we had a couple super short days that were kind of just wonky route errors. But on average, we were in the 40 to 50 range, but we went as high as 86 one day when we had to do a rain reroute going into Silver City. We had to push. We did a double day.
Did you have a lot of rain conditions? I mean, like,
yes.
My guess is yes.
So
it's August in
Colorado.
Colorado.
So in Colorado, every afternoon we had rain, and every night and we had these torrential thunderstorms. It was miserable. I have some video that it's just insane. But luckily, we only rode in rain 2 or 3 times during the day. We had a couple of like misty Oregon type rain days, and then we had one where it just dumped, and it was.
What were the temperatures like?
We got down to about freezing at night in some of the upper reaches of Colorado. We had about a week and a half of 90, 85 to 100 degree weather, and everything else was beautiful, like very rideable in the sort of 55 to 75 range.
Mm-hmm.
We got so lucky, like even going through the basin, which is known to being brutal. Road conditions, wind, heat. It was hot.
Can it turn muddy in there?
It can turn muddy in a second, but they had freshly graded the roads, and it was dry, and the winds were good. We had an amazing basin experience.
Where's the basin?
It's basically running from Pinedale, Wyoming, down to Rawlins.
Rawlins, Wyoming.
Yeah,
okay.
So right as you get into Colorado, so it's that southern part of Wyoming, and it's just desolate, rolling country that's sagebrush and.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Pronghorns and wild horses.
Wow.
And
the Great Divide Basin.
The Great Divide Basin.
Speaking of wild horses, did you take like a collective list of, or create a collective list of all the different animals you saw?
More or less, we saw no bears, which
I was going to ask, yeah.
You know, it's a pro and a con. I would have loved to have seen a grizzly. I really didn't want to see a grizzly up close.
Right.
At one place we were at Doc's cabin and in Montana, and apparently there was a mama grizzly with 3 cubs up on the hillside somewhere above us. We saw, moose showed up multiple times. We saw a lot of pronghorns.
What is a pronghorn?
It's a type of deer.
Okay.
Antelope?
I can remember seeing a video that you posted in one of the videos on your new YouTube channel. We'll talk about that in a second. Of a bunch of
That's what pronghorns. Yeah, that was in the basin.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you say elk?
Yeah, there were elk. We heard a lot of elk bugling. I saw a badger. I was very excited about my badger because badgers, I had no idea. They love to dig massive burrows in dirt roads, and so you'll be going along, and all of a sudden you have a foot wide pothole that's about. Goes down forever. And these are badger burrows, apparently. And so I saw a badger. And, and a lot of sage grouse and just wild horses. We saw some buffalo, but those were mainly, in field, already fenced in. We saw nothing going through Teton, which was really interesting because normally you see the bison herds and all of that, and we did not see them. So a fox or 2, a lot less wildlife than we expected. But on the other hand, that's not a bad thing because we did have terrorist raccoons one night that literally got into
terrorist raccoons.
Oh yeah,
I like that.
This was in Del Norte, which is in New Mexico, and we were camped this great campground. They came in and they took everything out of everyone's bags, every bit of food. Bags were sideways, and the first night we had terrorist deer that if you left anything out that was salty, it was gone and chewed on and spit out a little ways away. And it was just disgusting what they did to things.
Oh my gosh.
But, all in all, we had very little animal problems, but we had to be super careful with our food. So every night, you would take anything with a scent, toothpaste, deodorant, food, what have you, out of your tent area, and we locked it up. there could be, you did not want anything, even like on your bike. You didn't want your any bag on your bike that had food in it, you had to not have it near your tent because that's what a grizzly will come after. You don't want to be that person. And, I slept with bear spray in my tent too.
Wow. That's kind of crazy. I mean, if you think about like going to do something like this ride and not knowing these little things, you get out there like a couple days in and all of a sudden you're ransacked and all your stuff is gone and wrecked and like, we're screwed. But you probably knew all the stuff ahead of time. You probably had seasoned people telling you not to do these things at night.
And, we did, but you learn a lot. And I thought I was super prepared. I mean, once I knew I got in, I had about a 2-month runway. And I thought all about it, but still about a day in, you realize I've brought so much of the wrong things. I don't have the right clothes. I have too many of this. I have too much of that, not enough of this. And everybody was sending boxes of stuff home. It was just hysterical. Even the ones who had done this many, many times, trips like this.
Yeah.
But, I had too much of certain types of clothing. I ended up, I brought a couple of like jerseys and shorts and I was like, this is not working. Those went home. So I kept one pair of dialed bibs and I wore just t-shirts.
Yeah.
And a lot of sun shirts because the sun up high is
Oh,
brutal.
yes. Sure.
So you do a lot of thinking about like, how the heck do I keep this sun off of me? But that was interesting to me. It's like, oh, these shoes are wrong. So I ended up buying a pair of Teva sandals somewhere, and sending other things home and not enough. And nutrition was a challenge for me because I trained to sort of have food coming in all the time. And that's not how we were supported. So I was constantly scrounging for drink mix and things like that. So it was a real learning experience. And I am so much more prepared for the next one. So much more prepared.
Collectively, how many days was it?
We were gone from July 18th to September 18th, and I think the number of riding days was 60 something.
Wow. So
50,
what was the pacing like for like a rest day or an off day?
About every 8 days we had a rest day.
Okay.
Not that often. I mean, and we would go 4 or 5 days without a shower often, which was also a new experience for me. Because normally you think about, you do a workout and you're like dripping nasty into the shower, and it's very different when you're touring because you're not going at all in pace. You're at an endurance pace. You will get sweaty, but you're not, it's different. And you just kind of get used to that sort of like
sweat and sunscreen and dust.
And you wipe it off. And we had sponges and things like that, but it was a very different experience. And then those showers felt so good. And same with laundry. We didn't get laundry, but every 5-6 days sometimes. And you just do it in the stream or whatever, bucket, and make do, or wear dirty clothes. It was amazing how dirty some of my clothes got.
As far as charging stuff, you need to charge your computers and your phones,
my GoPro,
your GoPro, so that
my
you
drone,
can,
all of that
stuff. Dude, I know that like on the Tour Divide race, people have dynamo hubs on their wheels so that the movement of the wheel will actually charge their stuff. I'm assuming with this type of thing, the support van has a way to charge things, or how did that work?
Well, we did. Everyone had battery packs, and a good 10,000 or 20,000 block will charge quite a bit of because SRAM batteries, and I happen to have the 1040 solar, so my Garmin hardly needed charging at all. I would just do it mostly as a preventative because I didn't want it to ever fail
midway.
But we did have one of those big solar panel battery bank things that blocks, sort of big cubes, and we could use that. But we also, when we would be in RV parks and some other things, and we'd be able to sneak some power somehow.
Yeah.
No one ran a dynamo; they didn't need it, but absolutely, if you're self-supporting, that is like this, or or like a super, a 30,000 block or something like that, whatever amp it is,
which is heavy
to
haul. And with you guys, you could leave the block in the van.
Yeah, I always carried a small one because I just, in case my phone or because my phone was my backup navigation because I had every route downloaded on it. But just in case something died, I never used it, but I wouldn't go without it.
So you had every segment of every day already pre-downloaded. You knew them inside and out. You probably studied them
I did.
ad nauseum. Yeah, that's awesome.
And we had a map meeting every night too. So ACA prints these beautiful maps of each segment of the route. And so we would go over the paper map for the day, which I never ever carried. It was ridiculous, in my opinion. But we would talk about what are we going to get into and all of that sort of stuff, which was helpful as well. And these maps, people carry them when they're touring. Everybody has the maps. It's really cool. They're beautiful.
Gotcha. Sleeping.
Yeah.
How were the sleeping arrangements? It sounds like you might have been out in the middle of nowhere and you were in some tents.
We provided our own.
Okay.
So I have a Nemo bike packing tent, 2-person tent, and I bought a sort of one of those quilt-based sleep systems with a thicker mattress because I could afford to carry a thicker mattress, and I'm old enough. I need a little more cushioning than.
Amen. Yes.
So I actually slept really well, all things considered. You know, you learned who snored and who didn't, and you kind of figured out who you wanted to sleep near, and we slept in everything from literally bush camps where you're beating down cactuses and things like that to beautiful campgrounds and beautiful RV parks. And then we had some hotels of varying quality, some that I will never ever want to see ever again. But you know what? It felt like a palace when you're in it, but it might have been a D- kind of thing.
It had hot water.
It had hot water and the sheets looked almost clean. And it was
I'm going to camp on top of this.
Exactly. We also had some really nice ones too.
Pitches her tent on top of the bed. That's awesome.
And you also had the option to kind of like buy your own hotel room too. Like they provided X number, and then I rented my own quite a few times, 4 or 5 times. And then at the KOAs we'd stay at, you could get a cabin, and the women typically pitched in and got a cabin together, and we'd all kind of squeeze into one of those little tiny KOA things. But it still was, you had air conditioning, and you had a roof over your head, which when you're in thunderstorms,
that's huge.
Or if it's 95 degrees, both of those things are huge. Plus the ability to just like fully charge everything and do laundry and all that good stuff.
Scariest moment.
We had a very scary moment. I rode with 2 guys, and Tim and Corey, and they actually had done Cross America, the Trans Am, together a few years ago. We were in Montana just after we did Fleecer Ridge, and we were on a highway, and it was great. It shoulder and everything. 2 Class A RVs decided to pass us in tandem.
Oh my gosh.
The second one could not see what was coming.
Uh-oh.
There was one of those little sort of smaller jacked up pickup trucks coming towards the RV.
Uh-huh.
We couldn't see it either. All of a sudden you saw this pickup truck going off the road on the opposite side. It cut across the pavement and started to lift. So it was getting real close to rolling right at us.
Oh my God.
And there was no way we could do anything. I dove for one ditch. The guys kind of froze, and we were on a highway. So we did, you'd have other cars coming. Young kid driving, he held it together. He kept it on the road, on his wheels. Oh. And we lived to tell the tale, but scared the crap out of us.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't it crazy that one of your scariest moments of the whole thing was vehicle related?
It was. And we, not long after that, we got to Coulter Bay in Teton, and we're going down the road there, and there were a lot of cars passing, others coming at us, and it was just terrifying because for the 3 of us in particular, you'd have a car passing into the oncoming lane right at you, and we were just like reliving that, and all of us were just kind of
freaked out
for the rest of the
Pucker
ride.
moment,
We were super super careful after, just aware after that. But that honestly was the scariest moment. I had none that were my sort of me riding related.
Yeah.
We had some tough riding, but it wasn't.
What was the longest climb? The longest continuous climb that you had to do?
About 4,000 feet. That was going up over the 12,000 foot Indiana Pass.
Wow.
And it was from 8 to 12 or something, and it was just like,
that's a little pitchy.
It was tough.
Gosh.
It was tough.
4,000.
Yeah. And we had multiple like 12-mile hills. We had one down in New Mexico where it was like you had sand, you had loose rock, and you had sort of like bedrock, like lava bedrock, and you had to climb up over these ledges for 12 miles. It's actually my favorite climb of the whole thing, but it was, you had to be really creative and really technically confident to, it's one of those where you have to like pop yourself up over stuff and just really hit the power and then balance it. It was fun.
Cool. You mentioned that you took GoPros and a drone, and
I did.
Tell us about all of the equipment that you took and what you did with it.
Yeah, so I decided to take a DJI drone with me and a GoPro. I kept the GoPro on the bike every day, all the time, and just took film every day. I pulled the drone out, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 times. I was, thoughtful about where I was trying to fly it and stuff like that. And part of it was I was very new to drones, so I learned a ton. By the time I got to New Mexico, I did some really cool footage, and I was really happy with it. My one regret is not slowing down and taking more, but it's at the time it was one of those things where you're trying to get to the other end and slowing down
in the moment. Yep.
And you don't want to inconvenience the people you're riding with.
Sure.
Although they did find it fun to get drone footage of themselves. So I made some small videos while I was on the ride. It was a great thing to do on a rainy evening, is just sit in your tent and play with the GoPro app and bring in footage and photos and all that. And I've got it all downloaded. I'm hoping to make a longer, like by segment series of videos that shows a little more of the terrain, not these sort of 3-minute clips of a day or two.
Right. I'm curious to know how many terabytes of media you have between your images and your video.
Idea.
It's probably pretty nuts.
I have no idea. My phone is overloaded. I've got to get all that footage off of there before I go to Central America.
Now, you have kind of already started like pulling some of that stuff together, and you've put together, I think it was like 5 or 6 videos, and you have them up on a YouTube channel. You want to tell us what the YouTube channel is called?
Roads Like These.
Okay. And it's a new channel that you just started, and you've got these videos, and you can kind of get a sense for what it looks like. I think most of them were just done with a music bed underneath them, and you just showed a bunch of cool stuff.
Yep.
Will you do any narrating in the future ones?
I'm planning to.
Okay.
I think I'll do some voiceover on them, and I might even film some separate intros if I have time to do it.
Yeah.
Just to kind of talk about where I am and what I'm doing and all of that. And the ones I did them literally on my phone in my tent, and versus doing it on iMovie or something more advanced. And I was actually really impressed with what you can do in the GoPro app.
It's amazing, yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I filmed when I was up on Lone Butte, and I may do a video of that. We'll see, and I'll do a bunch more between now and the end of the year down in Central America.
Cool.
I can't take the drone down there; they prohibit them in one of the countries I'll be in. But
like altogether prohibit, or
it'll be taken from me. So
if they search your bag, they'll just take it from you. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we've all been told no drones, which is fine. I can take the GoPro, and that's good enough.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
I have an uncomfortable question that I'm sure everybody is wondering.
Yes.
How much did it cost to go with a tour group like this for?
It was
2 months.
It was like $9,500.
So under $10,000 for because you're
pretty good
that's
considering
pretty
how
good.
much time you're spending.
2
That's
months.
a lot of time.
Yeah, and it covered all of our food except when we went out. It covered the 8-9 nights in hotels that they book.
Okay.
And it didn't include any alcohol. They won't buy alcohol.
Yeah.
I had to buy our own beer. And any incidental food you want, you had to buy yourself, and you could upgrade to different rooms and things like that. So I probably spent $1,000 more on stuff.
Yeah.
While I was out there, and of course when we went out to brew pubs and pizza and all that kind of stuff.
But just by yourself.
To me, it was worth it.
That's
because,
way cheaper than I anticipated it being. So that's great.
No, and it's meant to be in a quote, I'll put it in quotes, affordable. It's not a Cadillac tour. This is, this is at the low end of supported tours. But to me, it was worth paying some extra money so that I had that, just the security of knowing I'd get to the other end and I was less likely to be eaten by a bear and some other things like that. Having people to ride with, because I don't have riding partners who can do things like this.
Yeah.
My husband, that's not his thing. He'll show up in the RV and support me, but this is not his thing.
Yeah.
And so having others to ride with is just a safer way to do it, and more fun too. You get some camaraderie and all that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't. It's not something I would want to do by myself at all. It just seems like it's just not. It's safe.
Yeah, definitely. Although there's so many people who do this ride by themselves.
Yeah,
women
I get that.
And young women through older couples and things. One of the fun things is the people you meet doing the route in the same direction you do. You kind of move you'll be with them for a few days, you'll be with them for a week. And we had one couple from a Dutch couple that we met about day 4, and we didn't say goodbye to them till Pie Town, which is like 5-6 days from the end. It wasn't like we were riding together, but they'd show up at camp, or they'd pass us, or we'd pass them, and we'd see them at a restaurant. And it was so fun because we got to know them, and we all celebrated in Pie Town having pie together before they headed off to Las Vegas and to finish out their tour that they were doing. So that was one of the really interesting things is you'd see the same people over and over again going your way.
Did you guys do any karate in the garage?
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Yeah.
You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
I was like, we need reference for that because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Step Brothers.
No, but we did crash the Historical Society in Silver City, New Mexico's Denim and Diamonds Ball together.
Oh, there you go.
We all bought
so it's
tickets.
a bit of a wedding crasher situation.
We bought tickets, so we didn't technically crash it, but we definitely were not dressed at the same level they were at. But they loved it.
Smell.
Yeah, we were clean.
Oh, so that's no fun.
So were you happy with the bike that you brought?
Thrilled, absolutely.
You would not change a thing.
I would not change a thing. In fact, that's the bike I'm taking.
Except for maybe the gearing that you adjusted
I just
during
the gearing,
yeah.
But I'm taking the exact same setup with me to Central America.
It's also what you're comfortable with too, right?
I love that bike.
Yeah.
It's a Rodeo Labs Flanimal, which is a steel bike. It's a 49 centimeter. I'm short, so it fits me with 650B wheels. I can run it. Yeah, Flan the man. You guys know Flanny well. But, I can run 55 millimeter tires, which are huge tires for a gravel bike. And I can also run narrow, 30 millimeter tires if I want. And it's fast enough, and it's incredibly stable downhill.
Do people like look at like a couple days in advance and be like, yeah, it's worth changing my tires for this next block of time? Or are people just like, you know what?
We all had one set of tires we rode. I mean, there was one person who kept running through tires, so he changed his tires a fair amount because he chose the supple casing, and the Tour Divide that's an oxymoron. Not a good choice. Endurance casing all the way. No, most people rode the same because we were never on pavement more than a day or two, and then we'd be on who knows what. It's such a variable condition. Almost everyone was on what I would call almost a mountain bike tire or a knobby touring tire.
And people use mountain bikes too, right?
Most people did.
Yeah.
There were a few we were probably, I would say it's like 2/3, 1/3 mountain bike, hardtail mountain bike.
Yeah.
And, there were a lot of Surleys.
Yeah.
One question I have for you that's going to lead into another question. The first question, what is one thing that you think you forgot, or you forgot, or you kicked yourself for forgetting?
Oh, let's see. What?
Were you so militaristic about your whole prepreparation process that you brought everything?
I purchased stuff along the way.
Sandals.
Yeah, no. The one thing I ended up having to procure and realizing I needed an incredibly high level of electrolytes when we get into hot weather.
Oh.
It was killing me. So I ended up buying a bunch of LMNT, which is like, sodium through the roof kind of level.
It's like 2,500 milligrams of sodium per serving.
It's huge. And that was one thing I didn't really think about, and I now know. And everyone started using it, not every day, but if you'd been sweating like nonstop, you went through so much salt that you desperately needed it. The other thing was a pillowcase.
I'm a very salty sweater as well, and so on hot days, that's what I use as well as LMNT.
It's amazing, but I didn't have a pillowcase. I had a camping pillow, but I didn't have a pillowcase. And so I ended up buying one halfway through. That was the one thing that really was huge, actually, to have a pillowcase. Don't ask me why.
That makes sense.
Sarah, I've known you for a few years now, and one thing I've come to know about you is that you're very thorough, you're very well thought out, and I am very curious to know what your preparation process looked like. I know that you aren't one to take anything lightly, and you're going to be very methodical about it. And I think that your preparation process would be a good one to share with people so that they can kind of have an idea of what they should be thinking about or what their process should kind of feel like if they're going to do a big, crazy, bucket list ride like this.
Yeah. I touched on it earlier, which is, know what you're getting into. I mean, that is one, I spent a lot of time looking at Tour Divide videos and I kind of learned the route, kind of what kind of terrain we'd get into. I studied the GPS tracks once we got them, but I went through thinking of, what did I need the bike to be able to do? what kind of backups did I need? You know, hence the through axles and extra rotors. And
Did you break through axles?
No, but you could lose them.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and I brought an extra chain. I brought a zillion brake pads.
Yep.
I originally had a wax chain because I love wax chains, and I ended up switching it in Helena because it was just I was going through wax constantly. I was constantly having to touch it up, and it was just not working. So, but I did have an extra chain, and so I really thought through what parts could break in a place I couldn't fix them. Then I thought about really carefully, like, what do I want to carry on the bike, and how can I carry things on the bike? Because with my suspension seat post, it kind of takes a rear bag because I'm so short.
Yeah.
I have my Varia radar light, which turned out to be the best light ever. Everyone wanted one by the end because they could see me a mile away. It was
They're very bright.
They're very bright. But I couldn't run a rear seat bag because of that, just because of the geometry of how that seat post works and the lack of clearance. So I had to really think about, well, how do I put a frame bag in, and what do I put on my handlebars, and how do I do all that, and what do I want on my back? Because I knew I needed water capacity, and so I have one of the Uswe, one of the more robust systems they just released a new bag. I took that, and then what clothing? Because you have to think about the temperature ranges. I wore my down jacket almost every day through Colorado and upper New Mexico, and a hat, and I had down pants along and I needed them one night. But also, it could be 100 degrees, and so you had to have cycling gear that could go across that and rain. Yeah. But how do you bring the right things and not overpack? As I said, I did overpack, but I tried to think really carefully what could be multi-purpose.
Yeah, that's tough because that's a long time to have to deal with, like a temperature range that's going to be like 70 degrees in difference. And then knowing that you can only take so much, and you've only got this probably small little section of space that you get to have in this van, and then everything else is on you. You're like, all right, how do I cover all of these bases?
Yeah, you think about what can have multiple purposes. Yeah. And you get used to wearing two T-shirts. You have two shirts. You have one pair of day shorts, and it just kind of
layers. Yep.
So you wore water on your back,
water on my back,
and more stuff on your back,
gear.
I had my phone usually and I had some food, and then I had a pouch. There's a pouch where I'd put my lunch, so all of my day food was in there, and then I had 2 water bottles inside the frame, plus a little small frame bag, and I had the capacity to add 2 water bottles on my fork, and then I had a roll bar bag that I could fit under the kitchen sink handlebars, because the way they're constructed, it limits your bag choices. Plus, my frame is small, as I've mentioned many times. So that was how I carried what I needed, and I'm switching up the cargo cages on the bike so I can carry some bigger water bottles going forward. And I'm about ready to leave on another trip. So
let me ask you something. What would you say was like the coolest experience you had, or culminating experience, or something that really sticks with you? Because I would imagine that there were epic views, and there were fantastic roads, and there was ridiculous weather, and there was 60 straight days of riding. What would be, I don't know, what's an experience that you had that kind of had an impact on you?
A couple of the exclamation marks, if you will.
Yes,
yeah. So the day we went into New Mexico, the three of us, all of us, just looked at each other and said, "This is the most amazing day we've ever had on the." And every day's an amazing day, but it was we started out, and we climbed up this beautiful climb, and then we went up high to 10,000-11,000 feet, and we were up in sort of these alpine meadows with these big pine trees, and you could just see forever. And it wasn't what we expected in New Mexico. Every one of us was like, New Mexico, cactus.
Yeah.
No, when you're up high, that's not at all what it is.
Some ponderosa pines
yeah,
up there. Yeah,
and they were so beautiful, and the weather was perfect. And then we got into so many cows. There were so many cows on this trip. So many cows. And, cow fields and all of that. And then we had this increasingly technical downhill into where camp was. And it was a tough day, but it wasn't ridiculous. But when we were up on top, it was just like we all we never wanted to leave. It was just, it's just kind of one of those days when you're on the bike and you're just like, the world is perfect
So
right now.
New Mexico, a place that you'd probably go back and do some rides?
Yeah. And we had a weather issue a little farther south, right as we got south of Pie Town, which is an infamous place on the tour.
Sure.
Because there's 2 restaurants that serve pie in Pie Town and the Toaster House. Where we had to detour. So we actually missed going into Silver City, coming up over those mountains. We kind of skirted around on a paved road. And I want to go back and do those 2 days because you're up high and it looks like Sisters, but you're at 8,000 feet. You know, those wonderful lodgepole pines.
Would you do that by yourself, or would you find someone to go with?
I would probably con my husband into
There you go.
Supporting me with the RV.
Yeah.
We have a 22-footer and it can get most places, and definitely would do that. And I mean, the other place is Fleecer Ridge. I mean, that is just so
Where's
epic.
that?
It's in Colorado, Montana. It's very early in the tour, and it's south of Butte, right outside of Butte. And this is like the first of the big moments as you're in the U.S. portion. There's a few up in Canada too, and you go up to about 8,000 feet. This gorgeous climb through the trees. You get up on top, and all of a sudden, again, you can see forever. And then you go down. It's like 30%. Nobody, but a few very, very talented people. And one of our guides rode it, but he had a mountain bike with the brakes to handle it. The rest of us hiked it down. But it was just like one of those, like, you just know you just feel like you've made it on the tour when you've done that because it's so famous.
Crazy. What were the emotions, the feelings, and the thoughts when you got to the final destination, the very end, and you hit the stop on your Garmin for the very last time?
I was not ready to be done. I wanted this experience to continue, but it was bittersweet because you become pretty close with a bunch of the people on the ride. You know, you become really good friends with them, and to know that I probably wouldn't see many of them again. There's some in Seattle that I'll probably run across.
You guys all Strava buddies now?
Yeah, Strava and Insta and all that. And we have a text chain still, several of us do. But, you know, it's sort of like you're torn because it's such an amazing experience. You've been so isolated away from your regular life. This becomes your routine. And it's sort of a jarring, like, oh, we're in a hotel. Oh my God, I'm on an airplane. And then you get home and it just starts to fade away. So it's just this mixed emotion of, I don't want to say goodbye to you people. I want to keep riding. Yeah. But I do want to get home and I want to see my kids and I want to see my husband.
Well, that's where the video comes into play.
Yeah.
You can sit down and relive it and you can put something together that kind of speaks to you, and hopefully people can watch that and feel some of those feelings. And
yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because Antelope Wells is so anticlimactic. It's just, you're riding on this piece of pavement through the desert and you get to the border wall, and that's kind of it. And there's nothing else there.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So going back to the preparation process, just the quick bullet points of like, what would you suggest that people do? Are there YouTube channels, or is there a place to go and resource?
Is there some like a resource that you like suggest people to follow, or a channel that you think that people should?
So what I would say, if you're
or
trying
website,
to,
maybe?
Yeah, bikepacking.com does some amazing, both they have a route guide, but they also do the rigs of the tour race reviews. So that's a great place to see, what do people take along? What do they ride? What kind of tires? What kind of gear? And I stock that extensively, kind of like, well, I know certain people like Lael rides these tires. Who else rides these tires? And what bags are they using? And are they using a suspension seat post? And I was like, oh, they are. And so that helps you from a bag perspective. And then really just thinking, like, what time of year are you going? If you're earlier in the year, it's going to be colder and nastier. If it's August, it's going to be rainy in Colorado. Thinking through kind of like, what will you hit, and how do you keep pulling things out without losing that functionality, and being rock solid on your electronics. If you're going to, your Garmin, if you're bringing, whatever else you
like
need.
the 1040 solar.
I do. I mean, the solar, I think, is probably overrated because the 1040 has great battery life to begin with, but it never failed me. And of any Garmin I've ever owned, and I've owned a lot. Jake knows I've owned just about every damn head unit there is, including Hammerhead and Wahoo. I'm very impressed with that one because it's not done any of the normal malarkey that Garmin is so infamous historically for. Yeah. It was rock solid. It never failed me one. And it was really good when we had several times when our tracks were wrong. Oh. Whoever did the day-to-day tracks occasionally would send us into La La Land or across private land. And at one point, half our crew got chased off with people toting guns. We snuck through.
Wow.
I think we were the ones that got them pissed off because we snuck through. But I could reroute. You know, you can back out, you can zoom out, and because I do so much backcountry riding, I was able to like, oh, okay, we need to be there. You know, we we could detour pretty easily. So yeah, I would recommend the 1040, and I would the Varia radar light as well.
Yeah. So you guys got harassed by some landowners, or
we did because we were sent over private land, and they just didn't quite like us doing that. Yeah. And so and there were other times we'd come up to a gated. We're supposed to go through there, and there's a gate, and you're like, well, I guess we can't go through there. And over the hill and dale, and try and get yourself out of that. And, you know, it's all good. It's all good.
So I expect you to make a video, too, to kind of summarize all of this preparatory work and what was on my bike and what was in my bag. And
yeah, I probably will.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Never carry sealant in your frame bag. Just it's a rule from now on.
Oh, no.
And my frame bag is no more. Let's just put it that way. It
was unfixable.
It was waterproof,
it's plugged.
right?
Is it plugged now?
Yeah. And so it busted in there. I didn't know it had busted because it was waterproof. And all of a sudden I opened it, and it had been sitting for like 3 days, and it was full of sealant. My tools were all full of sealant. I was just lucky that my extra SRAM battery was secure and had not gotten full of sealant. That was the only thing that I saved out of that. So anyway. It's all good.
Anything else that you would like to tell us about the Great Divide MTB Trail?
Do it.
Just do it, huh?
Yeah. I mean, a bunch of us are planning to go do the Canada section because we didn't get to do that. And I want to finish it off. I mean, I'd go tomorrow if I could go ride that. And I would definitely do it again. I mean, it's hard. It's, all of those things, but it's so, it's seeing the world in a different way and places you would never get to, and seeing this diversity of what America has. And the Rockies are just, I mean, it's stunning. Yeah. It in a way that you don't see in a car. You can, you just don't. And traveling by the speed of bike, as everyone here knows, is a different way to experience something than doing it on a motorcycle or on a car.
Gotcha. Now you're embarking on another big adventure. Give us the quick down and dirty on this guy.
So I'm doing another tour, the Ruta Maya, with the TDA Cycling, which is the crew that originated the Tour d'Afrique, and they specialize in cross-continent tours. So I leave, we start riding November 4th, and we start in Costa Rica, and we work our way all the way through Central America to Tulum. So I'll be back right before Christmas.
Are you worried about that at all? I mean, no, not.
We're staying in hotels, first of all. I've been injected up in more ways than I ever want to be. So, if a rabid dog comes at me, I'm probably okay.
I'm good. I got this.
Yeah. I've yellow fever, you name it. I'm getting through. We're staying in hotels. So that's one thing. And they know the area. If they can take people through Africa, I think they can get us through Central America.
All right.
But it is not a paved tour. It's going to be gravel. It's going to have way more climbing, I think, per day than what I just did.
Wow.
We have a day that has 10,000 feet of climbing over 62 miles.
Oof.
That'll be fun. But the average of like 4,500 feet a day.
Yeah. I did a mountain bike race once that was 58 miles and 12,000 feet of elevation, or just shy of 12,000 feet. Yeah. That's a big day on the bike. Enjoy that.
I've done stuff like this before, but it's rough roads. It's going, it won't be smooth pavement. It'll get easier as we get closer to Tulum, but the first, 2/3 of it, I think, will be quite chunky and fun.
Yeah. Are you prepped, packed, and ready to go mostly? Ish.
Well, ish. Yeah. I mean, the bike is more or less ready to go. I had it tuned up and all of that, and I know what gear I need. The challenge is we're leaving. I'm helping my husband drive to Tucson we leave Sunday, and I'll be back 2 days before I leave. So I've kind of got a big pile of shit I've thrown together, and I'm squeezing in injections and all that. But yeah, I mean, I'm ready enough, and I'll get it pulled together, and I don't have to worry about camping gear. I have a 1 duffel limit on this trip, and so it's really, again, it's going to be that refinement. I mean, I have a big pile. That pile's got to get cut down.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I will bring a down jacket because we do get up to 6,000, 7,000 feet. Who knows? But it'll also be 85 degrees a lot and humid. And so I have to really think through, dry riding versus humid riding. We don't train for heavy humid riding here. And like what I just did, there was really no humidity at all. So I'm probably changing up a little bit of what I'm bringing, but again, it's going to be sunny. It's going to be buggy. It's going to be all of those things.
How long did you say that this route was?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's I think a little less than what I just did. And I could look it up, but
it's still like 50 days. It's 6 weeks or something.
We have a few more rest days, but we do more riding day.
Okay.
So, every time we get to a cool population center, we have
a day off. Yeah.
Which is good and bad because, when you take a day off, your body then says
yes
the next day. And so it'll be a little more of getting over that. But
so that's a good question. On your off days, your rest days, did you still go out for a little spin to kind of keep the legs
we walked
loose?
A lot.
Okay.
Mostly walked. I mean, occasionally I'd get on the bike, but mostly you were doing bike maintenance, laundry,
maybe some sightseeing.
But I usually walked, 5 to 10 miles at any given rest day just because I was going places and I did not want to get on my bike.
What time did you guys typically start your rides?
We would start anywhere from like 6:30 to 8. Typically it was around 8 o'clock. We had a schedule of coffee at 6:45, breakfast at 7, and then you'd have to make your lunch and then you'd clean up, and we'd sort of trickle out in our riding groups. We were usually one of the last ones out because we were helping to clean up or whatever, and we were fine with that because we knew we'd get to the other end. But
gotcha. You probably already mentioned this, but how many people were in your total caravan?
We had 13 plus two
That's
guides.
Right, you said that. Okay.
And by the end it was
8. I think is what you said.
And
okay.
2 guides. So one person drove, one person rode of
gotcha.
the guides.
All right.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Boys, any other questions for her?
I think that's it. I've got to rock out here soon.
All right. Well, then it's perfect timing. Let's jump into one last thing. Matt, you want to go first?
I think last week the last video that I put up on YouTube was talking about the Zwift Hub 1 trainer.
I think that is correct.
The next video is talking about swimming with the Apple Watch and Apple Watches in general.
All right, that's coming out this week?
Should come out tomorrow.
Oh.
If I can get my butt in gear. We'll see. I've got some meetings and stuff like that, but
cool.
That's the plan.
Right on. Lance, you got one last thing?
There's the second race in the Cyclocross Crusade series happening this Sunday. It is at the PIR infield, which is the same area where Trophy Cup was, but it will be a very different course and a different experience than Trophy Cup. So that's what we got coming up. That's what I know.
What's the weather supposed to be like?
There's a possibility of rain on Sunday, but we're supposed to be dry all week.
Yeah.
So it could just be greasy if there's a little bit of rain, but
should be a fast course though?
Yeah, it should be a fast course.
And you'll be out there?
I'll be out there.
Sweet. Sarah, you got one last thing for us?
I guess I would just say if you want to see what I'm doing, you can follow my YouTube channel. I will post things up during that, or my Instagram.
Give us that one more time.
Roads Like This is my YouTube, and it's Sarah Gates 01 is my Insta.
It's Roads Like These.
These.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I want to make sure they get that right.
Yeah, and why I say this instead of these,
Roads Like These.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. My one last thing is we have a cool little thing that we're going to be pushing out to the whole cycling community that even the podcast listeners can jump onto. We've been using with pretty great success an app called Slack, which a lot of people are familiar with, and we've been using that to manage our team. And we've been doing that now for about a year and a half or so. And it's been fantastic. And we've had a lot of people that have asked if they could join that. We've had a lot of people want to be a part of that. And we have pretty much had to say no to a lot of people because it's pretty much for people who are on the team. So we have created a new Slack workspace for just dialed cycling, and we are going to be rolling that out. We've kind of already soft launched it. We're doing some little testing it, if you will, just to make sure that it's going to be nice and smooth and have all the appropriate channels. But we're going to be pushing that out to the world, and anybody who would like to join that can come on in, and there'll be a podcast channel in there as well that we can have people that can interact with us and send us questions and send us videos and tell us how much we suck. There will be stuff in there where people can talk about rides, and we'll do ride announcements for the local people, and then there'll be stuff for people all over the country. It'll just be a great little community for people to be a part of, and it should be a lot of fun. So look for that. We're going to be pushing it out onto pretty much everything, like all of our social medias. We'll push it out on Strava and emails and all over the place. So should be fun. Cool. All right. I think that is it for this week. We will be back next week with another one. Until then, bye for now.
right, well, this has been pretty scary, and I need to feed my cat.
Go home, Sugar Bear. Go home.